What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to another review. Today we are taking a look at the Joytoy Steel Knights TEIKUI TK01 and the UNF-X core. Essentially, those are the soldiers, and the TEIKUI is the TK01 is the mech. Now, Joytoy created a line known as Steel Knights, which it's obviously where these come from. This is based on designs and elements and concepts that were seen in the universe of Titanfall. I love Titanfall. Titanfall 2 is easily one of the best shooters I've ever played, and it's one of the most underrated games of this console generation. But so much care was taken to make that world feel lived in and feel believable, and the characters feel familiar but different from anything we've dealt with in the past. I mean, they're military, but they're not the same voices that the emphysema ridden voices that you normally hear. The looks of the characters are kind of along those lines, but you still got some variety. But the design overall of the mechs and the soldiers are just top notch. Now, they ripped designs, at least in the first, they have them separated by generation. So, generation, I want to say 1 through 3, run through 3 or 1 through 2 are mostly Titanfall-esque designs. Be careful though, because some of these designs are actually miniatures, like what you're seeing right now. Others, like these, are actually posable figures. You can actually pose them. They're like G.I. Joes. They've got armor and pieces that you can take off and all that good stuff. But the mechs themselves, that's BT right there. So, know this going in. And I think that towards the end, when they got to Generation 4, 3 and 4 maybe, they started to, switch up the designs and go for more original looks, because I think it was becoming obvious, and maybe they were getting into copyright infringement territory. I mean, they definitely are in that territory if they're straight up just stealing designs from Titanfall and coloring them differently. But, that's China for you. But this here is the UNF-X core figure that I got. I thought he looked really cool. I thought he wasn't bulky, too bulky to be a pilot, and actually be in the figure or the mech. But I will compare, and you'll see more on how the mech fits in. And I apologize for the quality of some of these pictures. It's hard to find good quality images. But this is what I got right here. This is the TEIKUI. And it comes with, there is a set. He doesn't come with it. But there's a set that you can get. It's an add-on set with the bike and a tank piece that you can combine with the TK to give him a more epic, look. More ammunition, because he doesn't come with a gun. I gave him that gun from something else, but he comes with his sword. So if you want him to have more firepower, you can add those pieces on, and you get something like this. And there's other configurations and whatnot. I just figured these were the most interesting ones, so I would show you those, so you can kind of see what the look is for this particular line. You know what I mean? And for this set. But all in all, though, I just want to get, before we get into the review proper, there is a lot to be had, a lot of fun to be had with this line if you are okay with the size, with the small size. That's my problem, is that I didn't realize that they were that small going into it. So there are aspects of this that just don't work for me as far as my taste. So this might be a line where I go in only to get the mechs. And that's it. Everything else will be geared towards just the mechs, not the people. And then I will, if I take pictures, I'll have to use, some magic to get the figures that I want to use, which will be like Fenris Company and stuff, or Maelstrom Company or something, or Perseus Company. They'll look like, I'll have to trick the viewer into seeing them as the actual pilots of these mechs. Maybe I'll build, interiors, and then, work with those to show interior shots, and then, that sort of thing. But anyway, the scale for me is a no-go for the little dudes. And I'm going to get into more detail on just how small everything is, and you know why it's something you really want to take into account before you decide to jump into this line. Now, there is another line by Joytoy called Dark Source. I'm going to be reviewing one of the figures. I picked up Andre. He is they're a Russian special operative team, and the designs are awesome. And the cool thing about them is they're 1/18th scale, but they come with so much shit in comparison to what we got with Joe's after Pursuit of Cobra, that it makes it a good replacement for Pursuit of Cobra. So I'm going to review those. They come out in October, so it should be sometime before Thanksgiving that you'll be seeing that. But right now, let's jump into this review and let me show you the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between, the amazing, the not so amazing, and help you make a more educated decision on whether or not you want to get these things and add them to your collection. So here we go. All right, sculpt and paint. As you can see, even at this size, there's a great amount of detail with the figure and with the mech itself. It's like they just didn't waste any, spare any expense making sure that everything was rendered to the nines so that you felt like you were getting what you saw on screen and then some when they decide to jump off into their own thing. The anatomy of the various pilots and, soldiers, it works. They don't look too stubby, and I thought that's what they were going to look like, being so small. And sometimes, depending on the photo, it looks like a 1/18th scale figure. And that's actually what kind of pissed me off about getting into this, is that looking at all the images online, they look short, but they don't look that much shorter than your typical 1/18th scale figure. I was so surprised when I got him in hand how small he was. As for the mech itself, it's pretty big. It's nice and posable, lots of joints. The articulation actually works for the build of the figure. And, the paint's not bad either. I mean, there's a couple small spots where it's a little sloppy. But overall, the paint is masterfully done, and I don't have any issues with it. And the sculpting work, of course, like I said, it's just detail everywhere. So they did a really great job with this. Accessories. This guy comes with a nice little bunch of accessories, almost like a little armory of sorts. Everything works with the figure, and a lot of things are preferential, and I like that. They give you the option of what kind of loadout do you want your guy to have. Now, he can't hold all the weapons on his person all at once, so there's that. And then you can decide what kind of look you want for your dude. Do you want him to be, your typical today's operator look, or do you want him to look like a soldier, a regular soldier, or do you want him to look badass like the pilots in Titanfall? The hat goes with the unmasked bearded head, and it looks all right, especially at this size. That's the part I have to give him props for. You get 2 sets of hands besides the stock hands. He has 2 guns besides the machine gun. So you have an assault rifle, a bazooka, and a sniper rifle. So he's ready for whatever you want to put him through. And he holds everything really well, too. The bazooka fits perfectly on his shoulder, even with the bulk of the vest. There's no problems there. I like that because you know me. If they're going to have weapons, give them the articulation to use them. It's one of the biggest gripes I still have with Marvel Legends, that there are characters who have a very specific thing that they do and don't have the articulation to facilitate allowing them to do that thing. So if you want your particular trooper to be a sniper, a grenadier, or just a rifleman, you can do it. No problems there. He can at least simulate looking down the scopes or the sights or whatever, and it's no problem. The backpack, you have 2 backpacks. You got a trooper or infantry backpack, or I'll start on the left-hand side. Or you've got the jump pack, that's what the thrusters are, and then you've got the infantry backpack. So depending on what role you give him, you have those options. And it fits perfectly and it doesn't get in the way. Or if you don't want a backpack, he has the jump kit already on his back. And I like this a lot because in the game, that's a very vital piece to how you traverse the landscape in your various missions. You also have a stand, a basic square stand with, I think, one peg on it, two pegs, but character sits on it perfectly. I didn't have any problems trying to get him situated, and even with those skinny little legs, it holds him up with no problem. So, I mean, you get a nice little thing. Now, the figure did not come with the mech. That's a gripe I have with this. The mech and the figure should come, and I think there are a few that do come packaged with their mech. Now, let's compare. I'm gonna show you a couple different figures so you get an idea and a feel for how small these guys are. They look like children compared to what we typically collect. And for me, it's weird because, you know, Joes come with a lot of stuff, at least the ones I was collecting. So it's hard enough to keep track of your small, you know, pistols and knives and, you know, walkie-talkies and all the little bits that come from Marauders and such. But then imagine getting all that shit at 1/27th scale. That's tiny. So, you know, I don't know so much. It's not my thing. Look at a Joe compared to the mech. Now, this is a smaller mech. That's why I got it. It was nicely priced and everything. But it is possible for you to film things or shoot images where the Joes look like they're the right size for the mech. So let's get into the articulation. As you can see, there are a lot of joints on the figure. All the rocket pods, the satellite, what do they call those? The satellite jamming arrays, your grenades, everything is articulated. So, you know, those little stands move. The thrusters on the back, it's on a ball joint, so you can actually move it all over the place, you know, which is awesome. Not that while you're playing necessarily you're going to need to mess with that, but if you take pictures, you will need to do so. Those are connection points for those extra parts that I was telling you about from the other set that you could buy, the add-on sets. So there's a modular quality to these TEIKUI mechs or TKs. You can see the joints all up and down the arm. So there's a lot of movement that you can you know, achieve. It's just very well done, very well executed. There's no places where, you know, he's lacking in articulation. Even the head being covered by a hood piece, you still can move the head around on a ball joint. The shoulders are ball hinges, and I'm going to get up closer so you can see it. And they're thick, so, you know, movement is not going to break it. It's almost all of the major joints are ball hinges that kind of act as universal joints, which I like because it gives you some really good range. So, dude's got ball joints everywhere, really. He's got them in his head. I'll move this up so you can see. Ball joint. Shoulders on a ball joint. Double jointed elbow. So you get a lot of, you know, range here. So you want him to block. There's your block. You want him to rest the sword on his shoulder or on there, you can. If you want these to go down, the missile launchers and the rocket pod, they're on straight up swivels so they can sit back. The thruster itself on the back is on a ball joint, so and then just straight, so you can just go, you know. It's awesome. It's kind of a wobbly connection though. I mean, you could nail you know, polish that up with some floor polish or put some tape on it, or put like I like to do is I use stick tack. Sticky tack, you put it on where you want it to go, you kind of smooth it on there, and then when you use the joint, it'll stick up where you want it, you see? See that? So anyway, you can do that. His hands are on ball joints at the wrist, so you get a lot of motion there. They're articulated in the fingers. It's a single joint for the forefingers, and the thumb is on a ball joint. There's a little, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little knob right here that sits in a hole on the sword, and that's what helps him hold the sword without dropping it. He can easily two-hand the sword. So when I complain about
you know, Marvel Legends figures not being able to two-hand a sword, or what do they call them? Mythic Legions. This is what I'm saying. Look at how bulky this guy is, and he can two-hand his blade. There's no excuse, you know, why they can't. The legs, hips are on a ball joint. It's a little bit of a swivel because of the ball. Double jointed knees, but they're double jointed, and then the one joint goes this way and the other joint goes that way, which is cool. So you have that like dog-legged look, because that's what they had in the game. So you see what I'm talking about? Dog legs. You can straighten them up if you want them to be a little bit taller, and that's what I like. And then when he's gonna jump, you could just be like, and then, you know. The ball joints in the feet, so you have all kinds of motion, and the feet always stay planted. And you also have a ball joint in the waist. So you want him to look like he's about to do something. There you go. See? Looks really good. You want him to look like he's about to charge with the blade, and put the blade down at almost at his side, or point the blade at the enemy, and then have him hunch over, and there you go. See that? Looks really good. So all in all, this dude is packed with articulation. The pauldrons on his shoulders are articulated, so they get out of the way, and they have knobs on them. I showed you the pegs for the artillery add-ons, but there are pegs here that also work for those artillery add-ons. But I'm going to get into another issue, one of the cons I have with this guy. I just want to note that the sword that you see him holding, that's all that comes with him. This gun came from a True Heroes Sentinel-1 exoskeleton that I reviewed earlier. I figured since it's the right scale, I'll give it to him. But let's go into my cons.
So the cons are going to be mixed up with the gimmick. So, you know, when you see something like this, a pilot mech, it's bad enough that all the mechs don't come with pilots. That's one con. But it's even worse when you have a mech that all the different figures that are offered, or the majority, do not fit in the cockpit. You see this cockpit space and you think, wow, it's going to fit a small dude, you know? You get your pilot, you get your soldier, you say, wow, he's a pretty small dude, you know? He should fit. Then you put him in there and he does not fit. It made no sense to me because I'm like, well, he's not that much bulkier than any of the other quote-unquote pilots, you know? And up until now, I didn't know there was a difference when it came to these individuals that you buy separately and you stick them in a mech, you know? So I don't know if it's it's an oversight on the part of the sculptors that all the figures don't fit inside, but they don't, you know, this guy doesn't. So I'm assuming there are very specific designed characters that are small, even compared to these guys, that fit inside of the majority of the mechs, which, you know, ugh. And this is a smaller one? That shouldn't be. And now for the bottom line. So I've shown you the ups, the downs, all the in-betweens. You've seen in great detail how these guys move. I think that you kind of have a good idea of what this would be, what this line entails. If you are into, you want something other than G.I. Joe, this might be where you need to go. Because there is a whole plethora of shit coming out of China that is on a different level. And they also double as tabletop game pieces. You come up with your terrain, you come up with, you know, who the enemy is and blah, 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 who the, you know, the opposing force would be. And you just play out your missions, you know. I know some people do that with Joes, but these are a better size for that sort of thing. It doesn't feel like you would be... it doesn't feel like you'd have to have a ginormous space in order to play with these in the tabletop game sense. The posability is there so that if you enjoy the posability portion and you just want to have models that represent these things that you like, you can have these. And I like that, unlike Bandai's various super robot lines, these don't cost the same amount as them. Some of the bigger mechs cost almost $100, some of them over $100, but typically they're in the, like, this was about 35, and the bigger mechs are in the $80 range. But the ones that are much bigger than this, they, I want to say they're like 10 inches tall. You know what I mean? Which is what I've wanted. I never understood why SRCs and some of the other robot lines don't make bigger robots. But then you could go to Target and look at the rescue bots section, and you can find 10-inch robots, 12-inch robots that you can actually put the toys, the smaller figures in to pilot them. Why don't we have some kind of equivalent for big boys? You know what I'm saying? Like for the big kids. It doesn't make sense to me. So this is a good alternative. Granted, it's more expensive, but you can do a lot more with these guys than those other ones. You can appreciate the sculpt work. You can appreciate the paint work. It's just a lot to appreciate in comparison to some cheaper lines, you know? And if you're like me and you love Titanfall, then this stuff is perfect. I mean, I have no complaints about what I can do with this. So I think that, for me, the mechs are a go. The soldiers, not so much. I'm starting to see the soldiers drop in price, and they're selling them in like packs of 4 now. And there's a couple 8 packs, that I'm seeing pop up in on eBay and AliExpress and stuff like that. So if you find a good deal, stick with it, utilize it. It'll probably be worth it for you. And that's if you are cool with this size. That's the biggest part I have to stress. If you are cool with the size of the figures, these will work for you. Nothing feels brittle enough to break. I have read posts where people showed pictures of, paint getting stuck in the thighs. So when they turn the thighs, they just twist the fuck out of the peg, and then the leg just pops off. So, it's just like anything else. There are QC issues from time to time, but mostly, from what I've read, most people haven't had those issues. So, a quality line coming out of China that has, a lot of potential to be used in different capacities, I would jump on it. There's something here for just about everyone. If they were a little bit bigger, I would be 100% on the whole entire concept. Right now, I'm just on top of the concept of having mechs and, using those mechs in my universe, because I'm a big fanatic about that shit, man. Pacific Rim, love it. Gundam, love it. Voltron, love it. You know what I mean? Like anything like that. Gurren Lagann, Giant Robo, Transor Z, or Mazinger. It's just so many things. Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, aka Gridman, who's about to make a comeback. That's my thing, Full Metal Panic, that's my thing. So I'm liking the mech portion of this the most, and that's where my focus will be in the coming years if I keep on picking up these figures. It took forever for the shit to come to me from China, which is usually the case. I think I bought one thing one time. I bought a Kamen Rider. No. I bought Arkham City Joker, the one that's not sick. Essentially not Clayface. And that came to me in about a week or two, which was surprising because that never happens. But everything else I've ever ordered from China has taken forever. So if you're patient enough, you can... These might be a good place to put your money. So... overall, that has been my look at the Joytoy Steel Knights TEIKUI TK01 and the UNF-X core. These figures, they're available right now. I want to say the TK is about 30 to 40 something bucks by itself, and the individual characters are like 18 bucks or so, which, plus shipping. which is another point of contention for me because they're not Joes, but they come with more than what we typically get with our Joes, and they have better articulation in some places than a lot of our Joes, you know. So it's one of those things. It's kind of a give and take, and at that size, I just don't understand why I would pay more for smaller soldiers. You know, granted, from an artistic standpoint, it has to be more difficult to mass produce smaller figures, but it also has to be cheaper because it's less plastic. So, you know, I get it. I've been an import collector for a while, so I get that there is some extra cost to be had when you're buying import figures. I just, I would prefer them to cost a more, and I guess maybe it is reasonable. If it was 18 bucks plus and the shipping was included, then, you know, maybe I wouldn't have as much of a complaint. But most of the listings I see, they're 18 bucks and up, and then there's shipping. So search around, see what you find. One of my ninjas let me know that Big Bad Toy Store, good lord, has some of this stuff. I think they have the Dark Source stuff, and they're cheaper there, and they also have the Steel Knights stuff. They may have the Steel Knights stuff. I can't remember if that was one of the things he mentioned, but it's worth a look. So anyway, this has been my look once again at the Joytoy Steel Knights TK01, the TEIKUI, and the UNF-X core action figures that fight alongside them. I think these are decent figures. The soldiers are decent. The mechas are exceptional. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will catch you on the next video. Peace outside.